what is going on with Enzo Maresca is going to get the Chelsea job. And in the Abramovich era, that was Mourinho, Scolari, World Cup with Hiddink.
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure there's been plenty of them that I can't remember. But it felt like that was always the most famous, highly qualified managers would get that job. And we're going to get the guy that won the championship is going to go and do the Chelsea job. I guess they think they might be getting the next Arteta because he worked with Pep at Man City. Kieran McKenna looks like he's going to sign a new contract with Ipswich, which I'm a big proponent of. Vincent Kompany is going to be Bayern Munich manager. What's going on here, Sam?
No, it's crazy, isn't it? It has been a crazy few weeks. I have been having to pinch myself a little bit, give myself a slap around the face, because it does feel very peculiar. And you know how much I love the league and love going to games and how passionate I am about it. But it just feels like it's a hell of a jump. Yeah, that's a really good point about Maresca and Arteta and Pep and such like. I think the most simplistic way to put it is that Chelsea has just changed so enormously since that era in such a short space of time, in that the model is completely different. You've got two sporting directors now, obviously the new ownership, and the way that they've put a squad together is very different from how they've done it previously. So they want a head coach to go in probably with a philosophy that aligns with theirs, that's got a clear way of playing, and is probably going to just get on with coaching the players without getting too involved in anything else outside of that, which would not have been the case under previous managers and the previous ownership. So he must tick a lot of those boxes. He must tick, and Pochettino latterly, unfortunately.
That's that Pochettino to the guy who's just won the championship. I mean, it's unprecedented.
Yeah, and the reason that it's difficult for me to fathom at the moment is that I've been there at every game, and obviously I've seen the shoots of recovery, and I've seen the performances over the last kind of 2 months of the season. People were saying, "Oh, that muddies the water." Well, really consistently through the season, with all the problems that he's had to deal with the injuries and such like, and the lack of balance in the team, the lack of leadership really at times this season. I still think tactically Pochettino surprised me and impressed me quite a lot this season. So the last few weeks of the season wasn't a huge surprise. I think we've seen the improvement in the younger players, Madueke and Mudryk, two in particular, who have found the level of consistency that maybe I didn't believe they were capable of at times in the early part of the season. So I saw the kind of fruits of Pochettino's labour and what everyone suggested he would be working with younger players, which obviously evaporates now, and Maresca has to, if it is Maresca, start from afresh. I suppose the other surprising element to us would be that despite on occasion, I think back to the game at Southampton that I was fortunate to be at, where Leicester were magnificent. Norwich a few days later played really good stuff. In the main, it's been a season for Maresca and Leicester that's been kind of littered with criticism from his own as well. So that's probably the most surprising element to it. We follow the Championship. We've enjoyed watching Leicester, but the manager hasn't half come in for some criticism at time this season. So if it was a Burnley Vincent Kompany scenario from last season and he pitches up at Tottenham, which was the rumour, or Chelsea, we probably wouldn't have been overly surprised. This one...
And you would still have been saying, well, that's a big jump.
You would have done, and you would have said, and I did say, he'll get there. He'll get the Manchester City job, even if it goes belly up at Burnley. That would have been my feeling last year. So this is, I think it's taken everyone a little bit by surprise, but to add some balance, they won the league. The system that they adopted at Leicester was taken on board very quickly by the players. He strategically signed some players in vital positions. The recruitment was really good. Thinking about Fatawu, Harry Winks, for example, the goalkeeper was really good. Mavadidi, those four, along with the vast experience and the steel that Ndidi and Faust and people like Vestergaard brought to the party, they made some good signings. And he he got the best out of some of the younger players in that team. So I think that will be an ingredient. That will be an ingredient, albeit I think if you look at his track record, was he at Parma maybe? I think I heard.
Not for very long, yeah.
And I think there was either a lack of young talent or a inability to use them or something along those lines. So I don't think he's always been maybe associated with getting the best out younger players, but I think we did see that at Leicester, and obviously that's going to be a part of it in improving the obvious outstanding talent that they've accumulated at Chelsea over the last year or two.
So we think the champions of the Championship are going to be looking for a new manager. It doesn't at the moment look like the runners-up, Ipswich, are, but we've also seen Kieran McKenna being linked with some gigantic jobs as well. What have you made of that?
Surprising again, and he's been amazing. He's been one of the best starts to a managerial career I can think of. Probably the best. I mean, it's just, and I've loved watching them. You know, last season and this, I think he's changed the landscape really, and I think loads of managers in League One and the Championship would just say how difficult they've found it to face his teams and how tactically they've been so different and so much to admire. So I'm not surprised he's been linked to jobs. The magnitude of the jobs, absolutely, I am surprised. I suppose to add a little bit of balance, obviously he's worked at Manchester United and been close to it previously and been on the fringe of it. So that gives him some credit, I suppose, in the bank. But I suppose the biggest thing, and again, forgive me if it's quite simplistic, but you're going from a dressing room with very good Championship players, very good League One players, not enormous egos in the majority of cases, to walking into one of the biggest 10 clubs, 5 clubs in the world potentially, which I think is a real challenge. I think probably Graham Potter found it a challenge, and I think someone like Kieran McKenna and his backroom staff, it may be a little bit too soon. So like Brighton would be a more natural step, wouldn't it? But then you would argue historically, and I know we're talking about the present day, but historically, are Brighton a bigger club than Ipswich? Are Brighton right now?
It's just in the Premier League era. If you've had a few years up there, you just bash everybody else into, and even across Europe, you know, even like Bournemouth or Forest have only been up a couple of seasons. They'll be able to outsign all the best teams in Spain and Italy now, won't they?
They are there now. You'd probably have a better understanding of this than me, but could you imagine Ipswich getting there? Or is the financial disparity, is the way that the club's ownership are running the ship very, very different to how Brighton were maybe a decade ago?
I think you just got to get past that first season, and then the door starts to open up, doesn't it? As long as you don't become a yo-yoer, and you see, like I mentioned, Forest or Brentford or something.
I think the other side of it, mate, is that you go into Brighton now. The form has been very inconsistent. It's been very indifferent towards the tail end of the season. I don't know. Forgive me again, because I did cover the Chelsea-Brighton game relatively recently, but I don't remember. I think it was 4 wins in 20 or something like that was being quoted a few weeks before the end of the season. So listen, they've not been winning consistently. So I think my worry would be you're going in there, and of course they'll probably refresh the squad in the summer, and we know that they sign brilliantly, and they have done over the last 5-10 years or whatever. I just think you might be going in at a really difficult time to keep your foot on the gas. And I think if he goes in there and they fall off a cliff, that would affect his reputation more than it maybe would do Ipswich having their inevitable struggles in the next 12 months. So I think in balance, really difficult to turn down Chelsea and Manchester United if they were viable options, if they were realistic options. I think the Brighton one, even though it would feel like a more natural step, I think that's one to avoid at the moment, just for the reasons I've stated, and that's just my opinion. He'd be, look at Rob Edwards' reputation now. Like, Rob Edwards will be surely linked to, I think, the top payers, the top supported clubs in the Championship and beyond. Probably there'll probably be some Premier League interest in Rob Edwards as well, even withstanding that they've been relegated, Luton.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, so this is going to rumble. We think one of the favourites, Burnley, we're going to have an open manager's job there soon. Leicester, I know they're not our team anymore in terms of, this being the Championship check-in podcast. Hull, Sunderland, so still plenty in terms of managers.
Corberan was getting linked to, was it Leicester? I think yesterday.
Yeah, which, I can see that. Yeah.
Just thinking it through now, I mean, you'd 100%.
Expect Stevie Cooper's agent's been taking a few phone calls as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, you'd 100% fathom it if Leicester was still in the Championship. Actually, Premier League. That's a bit of a jump for him. As undoubtedly talented as he is, that would be a bit of a curveball for me. That I think if he was given that gig now after the promotion.
Watch this space.